Hey there, and welcome. This is Erin. I'm the registered dietitian and the owner of Empowered Nutrition, and I'd love to welcome right now Nikki Glick to our live streams and to our podcast. Nikki is a current intern with me. Welcome, Nikki.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Erin. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. You've done an amazing amount of research on this topic that we're going to talk about, which is fascinating. But really quick, you're an RD to be. You're a student at University of Connecticut. You mind just like sharing a little bit with us about like why you decided to become a dietitian and what your interest is in gut health?
Yeah, definitely. I went back to school a couple of years ago to pursue this degree. So I just finished up a master's in health promotion, and it was combined with this all the clinical hours so that I can become a registered dietitian. And I went on this journey because I myself have struggled for 5 or 6 years with different GI issues, and I've been able to kind of hone in on some of those symptoms and some of the root causes utilizing nutrition and other kind of integrative techniques. So I wanted to be able when that happened, I was like, if I could do this and as a career help people figure out what's going on, how they can make their gut, as healthy as it can be. That's what I want to spend my life doing. So it's so amazing that I'm almost done, and it's been so great being able to work with you to kind of see how it all plays out.
Yes, Nikki, thanks for sharing that. That your
Yeah.
story is super powerful and it is so like helpful we're in this work if you have a personal story with your gut health and your digestion because it helps you relate to other people in their journey and you just have so much like personal like connection to it. I find that makes a huge difference, so yay.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Yeah, so today what you did, which was amazing, is you did a really deep dive in the research for us and you looked at how environmental toxins impact our gut health. And so maybe the first question on that we're going to think about is like, well, why do we even care about gut health? So what are some of can you give us just like an overview of like the function of our gut in terms of like what aspects of our health that it impacts?
Yeah, definitely. So the gut plays a lot of roles. It's kind of foundational to our health in general. But some of the things that it does, like it plays a huge role in the biosynthesis of different vitamins and minerals. It's a major player in our immune system and our ability to be healthy, fight off infection, as well as its ability to resist colonization. So of bad or harmful bacteria from getting into the gut and kind of like living off of us, which is what we don't want. It also plays a big role on other organs. So like our brain, there's that gut brain connection that is
Mhm.
huge. The liver and muscles are just a few of those examples that the gut plays in.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you touched on so many things that aren't related to digestive symptoms because I think that's a common kind of misunderstanding is that people think, oh, if I don't have a digestive
Mhm.
symptom, then I don't have problems with my gut health. But it's almost hard to think of a chronic problem that doesn't somehow relate to the gut. And so like I like how you alluded to a
Totally.
lot of those things. So for overall health, we need a healthy gut. And then tell me a little bit about like you shared with me the word xenobiotics in your research. So tell me about what does the word xenobiotics mean, and what are some examples of that?
Yeah, so xenobiotics, what what that word is, it means basically any chemical substance that's foreign to animal life, human life. So this could be like different plant constituents, it could be pesticides, drugs, food additives, even like uh, artificial like flavorings or sweeteners, things like that,
Mm,
as well as like pollutants, just environmental pollutants, maybe like um, heavy metals. But some of the major categories that have been researched to show that that direct effect of these xenobiotics or these chemicals that are not natural to animal life, and their effects on the gut microbiome would be things like antibiotics, which I mentioned, also heavy metals. But then there's this one that I think people are probably familiar with, phthalates. So
mm,
that those are the things that are they're commonly used in plastic to help make the plastic flexible, and that has been shown in different studies to have some effects on the gut microbiome. And I
yeah,
think, yeah, and I think that, when there are changes in the gut microbiome, not only just like what's what it's made up of, so like the actual bacteria and the different types of um, things that are like living in our gut, but also the functionality of it. When those things change, it can lead to elevated risks of certain chronic conditions that we're trying, obviously, to avoid if we want to be as healthy as we can.
yeah, yeah. Okay, this was great. So I think going down kind of that list that you shared, antibiotics, I think it's not a stretch to kind of understand the impacts of that. So you're going to have where the microbiome is made up of bacteria. So if you take a drug that kills bacteria, you're going to have an impact on your microbiome. That makes sense. But even in that, I was going to say that's almost the obvious one, but I've actually had a lot of clients where they have a past history of getting exposed to a lot of antibiotics. Maybe they grew up with like ear infections or acne and had a lot of antibiotics for that. And then
Hmm.
they have like further downstream health effects from that impact of their gut health in early life. So that one's really good. And then to bring up, and then um, pesticides. I know I'm going out of order of what you said it, but
Yeah,
pesticides
it's
I
okay.
think are in such an interesting story in terms of like, okay, organic food. I get that there's like a pesticide on food that's not organic. What is the actual like impact if I'm eating a lot of pesticides? Like how would that actually like impact my gut health? Like what would be a mechanism for that?
Yeah, so there's something called the shikimate pathway, which
Mm.
is present. It's present in plants, right?
Yeah, it's in
Yeah.
bacteria. It's a part of bacterial like metabolic metabolism. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the shikimate pathway, which is it's the target of the herbicide glyphosate, which is in
Mm.
Roundup, which is like a really common pesticide, right?
Yeah.
So and the shikimate pathway, so it's present in human gut bacteria. So when that glyphosate is applied to plants, even though human beings like our cells don't have that shikimate pathway, our gut bacteria, a lot of them do. So when we
Yeah.
eat those plants that have that chemical, that pesticide glyphosate on it, it basically means that we can downstream affect our gut microbiome, and because our gut microbiomes have that shikimate pathway, and I believe
Yeah.
we have more microbes in our gut, like we're more our gut microbiome than we are our own like human
Yeah.
cells. So
Yeah.
it's big time.
Yeah, that's so fascinating because we think of like all the whole argument that they make like pesticide manufacturers is that like, oh, this isn't, this impacts the shikimate pathway that the humans don't have, so that it's not touching you in any way. But if you think about it that way, it's like you have more bacterial DNA in your body than you have human DNA, and
Right.
then and this bacteria is impacting all facets of your health, and they all have the shikimate pathway. Then like actually, there's a huge impact that just I think is it's almost like they found a loophole with that of like their argument. But yeah, that's really good. And then tell me more about phthalates. So phthalates come from it sounds like plastics and you can get it in sometimes like beauty products, for example. And did you see anything about like how those specifically impact the microbiome, how that works?
With phthalates, there was a study, and it was done with actually with newborn infants because these infants they were either receiving, and the reason it was done on them was because there were the control group that wasn't receiving any like IV therapy.
Mm,
So they didn't have that IV bag that is made up of plastic. It has these phthalates in it. And then the study group, the group that they were looking at, was receiving IV therapy. So they were in like respiratory distress, and they needed this IV fluid to help them um, stay healthy, help them stay alive as newborn infants.
yeah,
But what they found was that those infants who received the IV infusion, there was a decrease to some certain strains of bacteria. So one was it's called the Rothia species, and the other Bifidobacterium longum.
mhm,
So there are these very I guess I should say too, like there with environmental toxins, a lot of the studies are not done on humans all the time.
yeah,
There's more like animal studies, but this was a study done with humans, and there was that direct effect on that gut microbiome.
wow, okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm like building out the day here. Maybe you like wake up, you're trying to do the right things. So you have some like a smoothie, but the berries are not organic. So there's like pesticides. Maybe you had to have a course of antibiotics because you got some type of infection. And then maybe you you put some lotion on your face that has like phthalates in it that get absorbed, and then maybe I'll have some coffee with some, like, Splenda or, sucral like, sweet and
Yeah,
low
it's
in
so
it, a little bit
easy.
aspartame. Tell me about artificial sweeteners, like, they're just like the get out jail free card, right? We could just have as much of that as we want, and it doesn't do anything. What did you find
Right.
about these in your gut health?
Yeah, so with those, I think, they're generally like sweeteners like stevia or xylitol,
Mhm.
which is a sugar alcohol. Like they're generally considered safe because they're poorly metabolized by the human body, but like that doesn't take into account our gut microbiome and like the
Mhm.
bacteria, which is able to metabolize these xenobiotics. So back to that xenobiotics, right? Because
Yeah.
artificial sweeteners, they're something that are not natural to animal life, to human life. So like there's another sweetener called saccharin. So saccharin has been shown to induce both the compositional and also the functional changes of the gut. So not just the different levels of bacteria, but how the gut moves and how it's able to do its job. So there's
Yeah.
definitely an effect there.
Yeah. I find it interesting how there's such a dichotomy between like the sugar alcohols seem to have this like prebiotic effect that can actually be
Mm,
like beneficial, and yet then you have the other like artificial sweeteners that are um that seem to impact the microbiome in a negative way that drives insulin resistance and that promotes inflammation and weight gain. um yeah, in a way that, like, you haven't been told that would diet soda would do. Like, they'll tell you it's
yeah.
benign, but yeah, I think that's kind of an interesting dichotomy. We can't just think of it as like, "Hey, artificial sweeteners are always good or always bad." I think of it as like there's the sugar alcohols can cause digestive symptoms for people, but if they tolerate it, can actually be a prebiotic in a beneficial way, and then the other ones are suspect. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I agree, and I think it's also like, there's always a pro and a con. So
Mhm.
if you're used to drinking regular soda, and you're trying to cut back, and your first step is to switch to maybe diet soda, like
Yeah.
it's not the end of the world. It's small steps, right, to eventually
Yeah.
come off of that diet
Mhm.
soda, but yeah,
Yeah,
nothing's black and white.
I'm glad you brought that up. It's still, like, not as good as having the pure sugar and soda. So if people want to step down to diet soda over full regular soda, I'm the same. I'll take that any day. So yeah, cool.
Yeah.
How would I know if I'm like kind of worried now? Because I know I have some of these xenobiotics in my life. What are some things that I could look at in terms of like maybe how I feel, my signs and symptoms, or my health in terms of like knowing if I might be having some impacts to my gut microbiome?
Yeah, definitely. If you're struggling, there's a whole lot of things you could be struggling with that xenobiotics and environmental toxins might be playing a role in. So things like your mood. So if you're struggling with like depression, anxiety, or just like energy levels, if you're always tired, obesity is one because and we can see these things like with obesity, right? The gut plays a huge role. So if we know xenobiotics are affecting the gut, then it kind of makes sense that obesity
Yeah.
might be something we would be struggling with. But other things like digestive problems or autoimmune diseases, allergies, those are all sort of some of the things that might lead you to believe or pique your attention like, oh, maybe I should be paying a little bit more attention to where I'm getting these xenobiotics and how can I limit my exposure to them.
Okay. Yeah. So I like that. Just the way that we talked about how gut health touches many different facets of our health, and we can look to many different facets of our health to see if we might have a problem with our gut health. And there's obviously a complex world in clinical work where we get into like testing the gut and clinically working on the gut, but it also doesn't hurt to just think about, okay, do I feel like I'm optimally healthy? And if not, it never hurts to like reduce our exposure. So I'm
Right.
curious, yeah, what did you find in terms of like strategies people can use in terms of reducing their like burden, I guess, of xenobiotics?
Yeah, so a few of the things that we've touched on, but one is plastic. So reducing your use of especially single-use plastics, but even thinking about like your reusable plastic water bottle, switching over and like plastic food containers, maybe that you store food in, switching over to like a glass storage container, a glass water bottle would be a great first step, and a pretty easy switch. Um, Things like, so we talked about those artificial sweeteners, trying to reduce your intake of those if you are currently using some of those. And then really with pesticides, because it's so intertwined, right, with diet and nutrition.
Yeah,
So it's on our foods, but eating organically is not it's not always feasible. It can be expensive to buy 100% organic produce all the time. And so a suggestion there is to there's a list on the Environmental Working Group's webpage called the Dirty Dozen list. And though it changes from year to year, but it's like the 12 most highly, it's the 12 like different vegetables and fruits that have the highest amount of pesticides on them. So
yeah.
starting by kind of maybe buying a few of those things if they're like you're buying them week after week on your grocery list, kind of switching over to organic when you can, that would be a great place to start.
Yes. I feel like such a queen every time I'm in the store and I'm like, I will get the conventional bananas and avocados and save so much money because I know they're on
Yeah.
the clean 15. And now berries, I'm getting organic.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Totally. That's great. What about I know we didn't talk a ton about heavy metals, but you had listed those as like one thing that can impact our microbiome. I'm curious if you could flesh that out a little bit more in terms of like where might we be exposed to those, or how can we try to reduce our burden of that?
Yeah, I came across this really interesting study that was done in 2017 where, and it was done in mice, but they exposed mice to arsenic, and it was a
Mhm.
dose that was environmentally relevant. So it wasn't like too small or too big of a dose. It was like something that we might find in arsenic. You could potentially find in like a contaminated water supply.
Yeah.
Um, but what they found was that, the the abundance of genes in those mice that received that arsenic, the genes that are involved in like carbohydrate metabolism, as well as short chain fatty acid synthesis, those genes were significantly changed. And then
Yeah.
also, something I thought was really interesting, that the lipopolysaccharide, those LPS genes, which we know are like huge players in inflammation systemically, those were increased in the gut
Mm,
microbiome of arsenic exposed mice. So just really
really?
interesting stuff there. Yeah.
Mm, okay, yeah, that's good, I like that. So, like, it sounds like water is one potential source, so maybe using, like, a Berkey water filter, another, like, really nice water filter at home and trying to, like, maybe look in you can there's, like, websites where you can look up your local water system too, like the city water to see how they're testing in terms of metals and things.
Yeah, and I think too, soil like is another one for heavy metals. So if you
Mm,
do any home gardening, if you're a serious home gardener and you're not just buying like potted soils for potted plants, but like you're growing food maybe in your backyard, to get your soil tested there.
yeah.
Especially like if you're in a city or something like that, just always a good idea. But it's pretty easy. You can do that online as well, like get kits and send in soil samples.
Yes, oh, that's such a good idea, yeah, I love that. What
Yeah.
about, are there any things that we can increase in terms of, like, foods that we should eat more of, to help with clearing of xenobiotics?
Yeah, there are definitely some foods that we can consume to help
Mhm,
with that, with like our body's natural kind of detoxification process, if you will. But
mhm.
things like black and green and oolong teas. Um, it's going to be a lot of like fruits and vegetables, but like cruciferous vegetables. So, like your broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, trying to eat these foods organically when you can, but more vegetables is better than, that are not organic is better than no vegetables at all. So,
Yeah,
um, that's important. But
yeah,
things like leafy greens and microgreens, even like sesame, so like cooking with sesame oil or sesame seeds,
cool.
cocoa powder, berries, things like that.
So things that are high in antioxidants.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Okay, and then Nikki, tell us about you put together the coolest, like, free handout that people can get. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, definitely. So, created a handout that basically is like your go-to guide for how to, some of the science that we talked about here on this
Cool.
today on this live, about ways in which we are getting these toxins, these xenobiotics in our daily lives, some really practical tips and recommendations on how to reduce them. So, like foods to buy, foods to focus on, things to kind of limit. And it's a one pager. You can print it out, keep it on your fridge. Wherever, give it to your friends, your family, but it's great. It's concise, and I think it has a lot of really great information on there that will be helpful.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you, Nikki.
Of course.
I put the yeah, I put the link to the handout in the comments, and so, go ahead and grab it there, or if you're listening to the podcast, then we put the link to the handout in the show notes, so you can grab it, just click over to the show notes and click it there, and, yeah, she did a great job. I feel inspired to print it out myself and just keep it around as a reminder of not just the specific things to do, that's amazing about it, but also just I think it's just such a beautiful reminder of, like, the interconnectedness that we have, like, how intricately we're designed in terms of how the environmental exposures that we get can be so profound in terms of, like, they can harm our health in such a variety of ways, but they can also, like, provide improvements in our health in such a variety of ways, so it's like I like to feel, like, reminded of that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna print it out too. It's like such a good thing to have on hand.
Cool. Yes. All right, Nikki. Well, thank you so much for sharing this with us. And it's an awesome resource. And we are all wishing you the best as you go on to become a dietitian here pretty soon.
Oh, thank you so much, Erin. And yeah, it's been a pleasure not only just working on this, but working with you for the last little while. So thank you, and excited to stay in touch.
Same to you.